Resuming debate, reprise de débat. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm honoured to speak on...
Another point of order. I apologize. The honourable government House Leader.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je propose...
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move, seconded by the Minister for International Development, that debate now be adjourned. Ms. Gold, seconded by Mr. Woosen, moves that the debate be now adjourned. Pursuant to order adopted Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, the motion is deemed adopted.
Have his full 20 minutes the next time this matter is before the House.
1959.
And I know when we left this last time, the honourable member for Barrie Innisfil did get 3 words in, so we will accept the 20-minute speech on this one. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Arguably the shortest speech in the history of the Westminster parliamentary system, I would argue, but we'll have to do some research on that. But I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for adding that extra second on to allow me 20 minutes to speak about this important issue. And Mr. Speaker, if you were writing a Hollywood script, you could not write a better script than this. It has everything. And I'm going to touch on that in a few minutes, Mr. Speaker. Intrigue, fraud, crime, criminal investigation, all of it would make for a blockbuster Hollywood movie. And yet here we are in the House of Parliament playing this one out because of a minister that was using his position to further himself, further his business with business partners that are suspect at best. So, Mr. Speaker, I think what I'd like to do for the next couple of minutes is just to revisit how we got here. As you know, Mr. Speaker, you're ruling on the question of privilege that was brought forward by the committee. You agreed that privilege had been breached. There is an appropriate motion that was moved at that time that was effectively calling Mr. Anderson, the former minister's business partner, to the bar to answer the questions that he refused to answer at committee. Now, in the 12th report on the Standing Committee of Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics, I was obligated by the committee as its chair to present this report to Parliament, Mr. Speaker, and it had to do with the compliance of a minister with the Conflict of Interest Act, and it was really, in essence, failure to respond to an order of the committee. And of course, through the SDTC scandal, the fact that Parliament is seized with that privilege motion as well. Mr. Speaker, you understand that the supremacy of Parliament is paramount when we at committee or members ask for documents to be received, that the expectation is that those documents will be received because, again, the supremacy of Parliament is paramount. We have the right to compel the documents when we feel that they're not being provided to us. So on Tuesday, again, to revisit this, Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, May 7th, this is the letter that I wrote, the report that I wrote to Parliament. The committee agreed, pursuant to Standing Order 1083H, to undertake a study of the compliance of a minister with the Conflict of Interest Act. In the course of this study, on Thursday, June 6, 2024, the committee adopted the following motion: that in light of media reports and the minister's testimony at this committee and the Ethics Commissioner's confirmation that he is considering opening another investigation into the minister's actions, the committee call on the following witnesses to appear before the committee and testify for 1 hour. And that included Stephen Anderson, the character in question, and Kirsten Hoon, who was a partner with Global Health Imports. And that the committee requests that Stephen Anderson and the minister produce for the committee all of their phone records, text messages, iMessages, and all instant messages and call logs from all applications from September 8th, 2022, within 7 days of this motion being adopted. That September 8th date, Mr. Speaker, is critical in the context of the information that the committee was seeking in relation to the minister's actions in conducting business that he was not allowed to conduct. Mr. Anderson mentioned that some of the information requested was personal in nature. Fair enough. Requested that this information be guaranteed to be kept confidential, and that in the absence of the guaranteed confidentiality, that he would not submit some of the documents, and in the end, he did not submit any documents, despite the fact that the committee had compelled him to do so through an order. Now, pursuant to the same motion, Mr. Speaker, the committee invited Stephen Anderson to appear before it. During his appearance on Wednesday, July 17, 2024, Stephen Anderson repeatedly said that the Randy referred to in many text messages was an autocorrect. Oh. An autocorrect. Somehow there was a mistake. That over 9 occasions, by his count, that the Randy in question in these text messages were in fact auto-corrected. There was also some suggestions that it could have been somebody named Randeep. But there were only 3 directors of this company, 2 principals, Mr. Anderson and someone named Randy. So it was highly improbable that there was a Randeep involved in this. And Mr. Anderson, and this is important, Mr. Speaker, he repeatedly refused to answer members asking for the name of the individual referred in the text messages, and that he said that he would consider providing that information on a confidential basis if the committee was to move in camera. Well, fortunately, Mr. Speaker, despite the obstructionist efforts of the Liberal members of the committee, in its wisdom, decided not to go in camera and asked Mr. Anderson to provide the name of Randy. And it goes on further that the committee noted to the Speaker in his ruling, the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition, 2017, at pages 1078 and 79, that witnesses must answer all of the questions which the committee puts to them. It goes on. I'm not going to read. It's in the manual. The committee also noted that on page 1081 that the following is noted in relation to the witness: refusal to answer questions or failure to reply truthfully may give rise to a charge of contempt of the House, whether the witness has been sworn in or not. And that's really the point that we're at right now. And as a result, and in response to Mr. Anderson's refusal to provide the name of the individual referred to during the meeting and other documentation requested, the committee adopted the following motion: that the committee order Stephen Anderson to produce all of the previously requested documents in addition to the name referenced in today's testimony. And if those documents were not received by Friday, July 19th at 12 p.m., the chair prepare a report, which I'm reading from, to the House outlining the questions that Stephen Anderson refused to answer in writing and during testimony. Mr. Anderson, provided documentation to the committee. However, much of the information requested by the motion was not included, and more specifically, the name of the individual he was referring to during his testimony was also not provided to the committee. So pursuant to the order adopted by the committee did not receive any of the documents requested from the witness, and most significantly, the name referenced during the committee meeting of Wednesday, July 17, 2024, continued to be withheld. The committee, as I reported, feels that it was their duty to place these matters before the House at this time so that the House may take measures that it deems appropriate. Well, those measures, Mr. Speaker, as you have indicated, are to have Mr. Anderson, in a humiliating fashion, come before the bar of the House to answer those questions that were posed by the committee members. And once we dispose of this motion and we vote on it, despite many, as I said, obstructionist attempts by Liberal members of the committee to not get to this point, we are at this point where Mr. Anderson will be called before the bar to ask the questions that have been demanded of him. More specifically, who is the other Randy? Who is the other Randy? And that's what we need to get to the bottom of, Mr. Speaker. Now, as I said earlier, you could not could not write a Hollywood script better than this. It has it all, Madam Speaker. Has it all. The meeting, the chance meeting of the former minister and Mr. Anderson on an airplane flight coming out of Montreal and striking up a conversation about how it would be great if they got into business together. And I bet that the minister sure regrets that decision at this point, given the character that he was aligning himself with. The company was set up after that chance meeting, and those connections are critical because the minister at that time was not in government. He had been so previously, but he had gained a tremendous amount of connections within government that could elevate and escalate this business into dealings that it would not otherwise have. And certainly over the course of the last 9 years, the extent of insiders, the connected cronies that have benefited as a result of their connections to this Liberal Party are well documented, not the least of which is the SDTC scandal, Frank Baylis. The list is as long as the day of those insiders connected to the Liberal parties who have benefited as a result of that connection. The opportunity, well, there was an opportunity. The opportunity was for pandemic profiteering, Madam Speaker. We had gone to the height of a pandemic. There was procurement that was being done all over the country to try to supply PPE, for example, contracts that were being sole sourced. So the opportunity was there for pandemic profiteering, a perfect storyline for a Hollywood script. The fraud, which we've found out since, Madam Speaker, 7 lawsuits have been filed against the minister's company, of which he was a director of. 7 civil suits for fraud, not supplying material that had already been paid for. In fact, Madam Speaker, one of the last straws, it wasn't the only last straw on this, was the fact that there's a sworn affidavit that was just filed a couple of weeks ago that actually names the former minister as the Randy in question in one of these civil lawsuits. And so that sworn affidavit is certainly an indictment on who was involved with it. Then there was the fire. The famous fire at the company that still to this day remains unsolved. How this warehouse was set on fire that housed many of the products that GHI was storing. The cocaine connection, where one of the people involved with this company was it's almost laughable. They were found to be transporting cocaine on an airplane, sharing a mailbox with this company. The cover-up, the extent to which the cover-up went on, and I mentioned that briefly in the information that I provided earlier, but the text messages, the fact that they weren't submitted after they were asked. And Madam Speaker, the importance of those text messages is because Mr. Anderson was directly communicating with the minister while he was at a ministerial retreat in British Columbia. And yet there was denial after denial on the part of the minister, and there was denial on the part of Mr. Anderson, and yet it's been proven through the text messages that they were in fact communicating. Wow. Well, the minister was sitting around the cabinet table. Intrigue. Hollywood script. And I did mention this earlier, but I think it's worth mentioning again, Madam Speaker. We saw many of the Liberal members really trying to obstruct the committee's work on this, whether they were filibustering certain motions. The role of the Ethics Committee as an oversight committee is to get down to the bottom of ethical breaches and violations, whether it's related to the Code of Conduct or the Act itself. And they were obstructing in every way. I finally had a sidebar conversation with the Vice Chair, and I said to him, if you're willing to stake your political career and capital on defending this guy, given the amount of evidence that has been produced before us, the text messages, the civil lawsuits, the sworn affidavit, I said, this is not a hill that I would die on, quite frankly, and we've seen in recent news that they let him go. But again, more intrigue, the money, almost $180 and $10 million in contracts. A $500,000 fraud case that's going on for not supplying PPE to a company that had already forwarded the money. And of course, we heard about the Indigenous connection too, Madam Speaker. The fact that the company had claimed an Indigenous connection and be able to submit bids on Indigenous procurement and contracts. And certainly the mighty Ogo has been dealing with that and other committees as well. But the minister was embarrassingly had to step down as a result, in large part, because of that false claim of the Indigenous connection. And I think the icing on the cake on this one, and the last straw, was certainly the police investigation, Madam Speaker. The fact that the Edmonton police are now involved and engaged in a criminal investigation onto this company. I think the Prime Minister had no other choice, Madam Speaker, but to force the resignation and have the minister stand down as a result of all of those things. A beautiful Hollywood script that would probably be a moneymaker if it was to be produced. Now, of course, if you were to produce a movie like that, you'd need a cast, you'd need an ensemble. So who would some of those cast members be? So, maybe perhaps for Randy, we might look at Stanley Tucci or Jason Alexander from Seinfeld. Stephen Anderson. I thought, as chair of the committee, I saw him come into I think he thought that he was auditioning for a reality TV show when he came into committee. Honestly, he lacked the credibility and the indifference he showed to our committee in requesting this information was quite something. So who would play him? Brad Pitt, maybe. Charlie Sheen might play him. Who would play the chair of the committee? Who would play me? Well, I think Mike Pence would be a good choice, but I'm not sure that the former Vice President of the United States would go. So I'd settle for Tom Cruise if that was the case, and then for the Prime Minister, I'm thinking maybe Kevin from The Office would be a good choice for that. But other ensemble members, Madam Speaker, Rosie O'Donnell certainly would be there. Gerald Depardieu. My favorite actor, Denzel, would be part of that. Ryan Reynolds. We could get Cher in there as well. Macaulay Culkin and Jude Law. I suggest that perhaps for the member from St. Albert, Edmonton, that would be a good choice of actors. And of course, Dog the Bounty Hunter, because he would be himself, because the committee has summoned both Mr. Anderson and the other one, Papineau, Miss Anderson and Papineau to the committee. We summoned them the other day, so we're hoping. So maybe Dog the Bounty Hunter can find them, because they're nowhere to be found on the radar. But Madam Speaker, seriously, the minister has stepped down, forced to step down as a result of all of the things that I've listed that would make this perfect Hollywood script. He said he wants to clear his name. He's going to take time to clear his name, and he has not. I haven't seen him since. I suspect that he's probably out there. And I really would like to give the minister an opportunity to clear his name. We have Mr. Anderson. Once this motion does get approved, Mr. Anderson will be appearing before the bar. The motion indicates how many members on each side are going to be able to ask Mr. Anderson questions. And if the former minister and the member from Edmonton Centre truly wants to clear his name, I can't think of a better way to do that than in this place, facing his accuser. I think that would be a perfect opportunity. Get out of the fetal position, lick your wounds, come in here and face your accuser, Madam Speaker. And so I want to give the member from Edmonton Centre that opportunity. And so that's why I propose and I move, seconded by the member for St. Albert, Edmonton. Actually, I'm going to change that to the member from Cypress Hills, Grassland. because I don't see the member in his.
He's here.
Are you in? Are you in? Okay. Yes. So I'm going to move, seconded by the member for St. Albert, Edmonton. Yeah. Either Macaulay Culkin or Jude Law. That the amendment be amended in subparagraph F1 by adding the following: followed by an additional 10 minutes, which shall be allocated to the member for Edmonton Centre. That'll give him an opportunity to face his accuser in this place at the bar in an attempt to clear his name, and I think that will make for an interesting ending to this movie. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mr. Brassard, seconded by Mr. Cooper, moves the following sub-amendment: that the amendment be amended in subparagraph F1 by adding the following, followed by an additional 10 minutes, which shall be allocated to the member for Edmonton Centre. The amendment is in order. Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Staying with the theme of Hollywood productions, I'm thinking of Homer Simpson and the leader of the Conservative Party, Madam Speaker, quite frankly. Because when I think of Homer Simpson, I think of just to the degree in which the leader of the Conservative Party continues to thumb his nose at the issue of getting a security clearance. We have every leader in the House of Commons that has recognized that foreign interference is such a serious issue, yet we still recognize that the leader of the Conservative Party believes that he doesn't require it, even though there have been allegations that his own leadership was interfered by foreign interference, Madam Speaker. Among other issues related to foreign interference, we still have the leader of the Conservative Party refusing to deal with the issue. So the question is, when the Conservatives are on the issue of character assassination, I'm wondering if he would reflect on the character of his own leader and indicate why it is he believes his leader does not have to get a security clearance.
For Barry Innisfil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And in the vein of the Simpsons, I would like to thank Montgomery Burns for asking that question. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I prefer the character of Homer Simpson over the Prime Minister any day, too, by the way. Madam Speaker,
More likable.
we're talking about $110 million in contracts here. We're talking about 7 civil suits that have engaged against the former minister's company, sworn affidavit where he's been named by the person who has been filing the lawsuit. This is, and a criminal investigation too, which I touched on in my speech. This is about having Mr. Anderson come to the bar and once and for all finding out the truth not just from Mr. Anderson, but also finding out the truth from the former minister. Like, we need to get to the bottom of this. And I know that the former minister has stepped down. I'm giving him an opportunity through that amendment to face his accuser before the House. But this is about the integrity of this place, and this is about committees and the power of committees to compel. Thank you.
Questions and comments. Questions et commentaires, l'honorable député.
The honourable member. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The honourable member for Shefford. My colleague was comparing some statistics and named some names that are characters from the U.S. If he wanted to make it more relevant, there are some French-Canadian characters he could have named like Rémi Girard, Patrice Godin. I could name a whole bunch of people, but I would encourage him to watch some Quebec shows so that he could give some better examples from the Francophone culture in Quebec. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I named Gérard Depardieu. He's from France, but I was born in Montreal, and I spent my younger years watching René Simard. I watched Céline Dion. I think I'm dating myself a bit with those references, but I did like Quebec music. Bye Bye Mon Cowboy, for example. Who sang that? I know that song really well. I have a lot of respect for Quebec. That's my province of birth. My parents were half my family is from Quebec, and every time I go back
Come out there, questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the speech that that my colleague and the chair of the incredible Ethics Committee just made, because I think it touches on an incredibly important point in this whole saga. We have a culture of corruption that has been allowed to flourish within this Liberal Party to the point where it seems like Canadian news coverage does look like a Netflix binge-worthy Hollywood-type drama. So I'm wondering if my colleague from Ontario could share about some of the ways that the Ethics Committee has been working to ensure that some answers are found in regards to the lack of ethics that we see in this Liberal government.
Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the honourable colleague for that question. Look, I've had a front row seat for the better part of 2 years at all of these things that have gone on. The SDTC scandal, for example, although it's touched many committees, actually started at the Ethics Committee. And generally, the Ethics Committee has been working well, actually working better recently since, well, I can't even say that the coalition agreement has been ripped up because it seems like it's been taped together. But I know the NDP member has shown some consistency in his actions over these 2 years in wanting to get to the bottom of things. Sometimes he's sided with the Liberal side, but what we've seen more than anything else is obstruction from the Liberal members of the committee. They've, on many occasions, filibustered when motions have been presented. It's an oversight committee, Madam Speaker, you know that. It's got the majority of opposition members on it for a reason, because like OGO, like public accounts, and like ethics, it's designed to hold the government to account. And what we've been seeing is more of that lately, and I'm glad, and this is the reason why we're at this point with Stephen Anderson. He's been called to the bar. It wasn't unanimous, but it was the will of the majority of the committee to report this to the Speaker, and the Speaker has found that a question of privilege has been breached in the lacking of the information provided to the committee.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I would like to thank my colleague for his intervention today. You know, I think Canadians following along would rightfully see that we have both a Conservative and a Liberal Party blaming each other for which one is most corrupt, which of course is not a very a good thing for our democracy. I wonder if the member would like to provide some insight on changes he would like to see within our legislative system that would make Canadians feel more confident that, you know, a next government, whether it is New Democrat, Liberal, or Conservative, would have some guardrails on corruption, because Canadians today are looking at, you know, a government under Stephen Harper that prorogued, that was plagued by scandal, and now a government under the current Prime Minister that is prorogued, that is plagued by scandal as well. What would those fundamental changes to our legislative system be from his perspective?
Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would remind the member that the NDP party, despite the fact that it's a fourth party and has never formed government and will likely never form government in this country ever, has been involved in corruption issues in the past. So it's quite rich for them to talk about that, but to and to lob as they do from the corner over there. That's okay.
Mrs. Strathcona on a point of order.
Yeah, I would just like to ask that member to retract that. I don't think that there's any way for him to have honestly said that the NDP has actually caused any sort of corruption, as we have, as he mentioned, not been government. So he
The honourable member has made her point. The honourable member for St Albert Edmonton on the same point of order.
Yes, on the same point of order, I'd remind the member for Edmonton Strathcona of one Dave Stupich, the former finance minister of British Columbia and member of Parliament, who stole from charities to funnel it into.
This is beginning to be debate, and I would like the honourable member for Barrie Innisfil to finish his answer.
Glass houses and stones.
Well, I think the worst part of what the member from Edmonton Strathcona is talking about is that for the better part of 2.5 years, they have been supporting, through a coalition agreement, all of the stuff, all of the scandals, all of the corruption, all of the expenses, all of the, everything, including the loss of civil liberties, if she doesn't like what I'm saying, Madam Speaker, tell her to cite which standing order rule that she's citing on this, because everything I'm saying is correct.
I have a point of order from the honourable member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, the House of Commons, the House and Procedure, Chapter 3. Oh, sorry, Madam Speaker. The House of Commons, House of Procedure, Chapter 3, talks about when a member repeatedly gives false information, that is something that can be ruled as unparliamentary.
That is, I think, a matter of debate, and I am not prepared to judge because I haven't been following the conversation. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
They can make those claims all they want, Madam Speaker. I'll stand by everything I said. In 2022, they signed a costly coalition agreement with the NDP, whereby they would support, or with the Liberals, where they would support the government.
Defer from the honourable member for Fleetwood Port Kells.
Yes, it is useful now and then for the Conservatives to be accurate. It was not a coalition, and he's misleading the House.
We will proceed. I think the honourable member has given an answer. Questions and comments. The honourable parliamentary secretary to the minister, the Prime Minister. Yes. The honourable member for Mount Royal.
Me, Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, thank you so much, as always, to my entertaining colleague and the chairman of my committee for that speech, although it really pains me deeply to be identified as obstructionist. I do not think I'm obstructionist. I'm sure the member would like to correct that on the record when he speaks. But my question was really, I looked at the minutes of the July meeting where we reported Mr. Anderson to the House, and I look at it and the vote was unanimous, and the honourable chairman had said that the vote was not unanimous. My feeling is it was a unanimous recommendation, because I do believe Mr. Anderson should be here before the House. So I want him to correct that as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable member for Barrie Innisfil, 20 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe in what I was saying was with respect to going in camera. I can tell you that wasn't unanimous. That's what I was referring to my honourable member. I do want to say that he conducts himself with great honour and great integrity at the committee. Yeah, thank you.